Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Home Tech. Jason Griffin here. So happy to be back with you after a short week off, and I am joined, as always, by my partner, Seth Johnson. Seth, how's it going?
Good, Jason. How was the vacation?
Good one. Oh, man. Things are good. No complaints here, but as listeners to our show are likely aware, my wife and I just had our second baby, and that was the reason for taking last week off to just spend a little bit of time kind of getting adjusted. We've got a 20-month-old daughter now and a son who's just about 2 weeks old. So things are great. We feel really blessed. Mom's healthy, baby's healthy. So all good stuff, but not a lot of sleep to be had at the Griffin house right now.
Yeah, it's a stay-at-home vacation, right?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, man. That's
Thank
super
you.
exciting.
Yeah, we're very excited. Like I said, we feel very blessed and just fortunate. And so was nice to take a week off and just kind of enjoy that. But excited to get back in the saddle with you here. There was actually quite a busy week here. We've had some slow news weeks, but quite a bit going on this week and no guest lined up. So it's just going to be you and me, Seth, kind of kicking around some news stories. And like I said, excited to get started.
Cool. Well, let's drop in. We are 2 weeks away from a secret Sonos announcement, Jason.
Yes, very, very secretive. And I've got some speculation, Seth. Do you think that this will finally be the event where Sonos gives us AirPlay?
Stop. You're joking.
I had to beat you to the AirPlay reference this week.
Oh, man. That was mine to make. Yeah. No, Sonos will not be announcing AirPlay at the August 30th.
So what do you think this is? I really don't know. I personally hazard a guess here.
The only thing I can think of is their little tagline that they have here, Sonos and the future of sound at home. Come hear how it's all connected. To me, I think they're going to release an API finally.
Oh, you think, huh?
Yeah, I think with the rumors that we've been hearing, we're hearing that Crestron and it's going to show. There's pretty good rumors that Sonos is going to release the API at CEDIA, which would be good for them. They've needed to have one for a long time. It's the reason I think most of the systems have been really slow to adopt Sonos. I think Savant just got it a couple of months back where they had pretty deep integration with Sonos.
Yeah, it was, I wouldn't call it deep. It's actually pretty minimal. It works great. It's just like I think they opted to go with keeping things kind of simple and clean. And so you've still got to, if you're a Savant user using in conjunction with Sonos, you've still got to do a lot of like the library management and things like that in the Sonos app. But once you've got some playlists and favorites set up, you can then call those from within Savant. So fairly limited, but I think for most people does the job pretty well. And for day-to-day use, I think fits the bill.
Yeah. I think the more you stay in the Sonos app, the better off you are. I really like Control4's integration with it because you can either use the Control4 app that kind of mimics the Sonos app in Control4's own little way, and then you can use the Sonos app, which is what I do. But you can also, with the Control4 drivers, you can actually watch the Sonos equipment, and when a zone turns on, you can turn on different amplifiers that the Sonos system won't even know about. So I really like that, being able to automate off the Sonos system. So if they have an API, that even more the better. Savant, URC, Crestron, all the other automation companies will be able to catch up fairly quickly and hopefully have good integration with Sonos. Long time coming, finally.
Yeah. Well, like you alluded to, I believe that event is August 30th in New York, I believe at their new retail space there in Soho. And so I'll be very curious to see if your speculation is correct. And I think it's an astute observation. They are emphasizing that see how it's all connected thing. And so I think you're probably is some truth to what you're saying, and time will tell. But let's move on here. Conversation continues, Seth, in our industry about what we should be called. This is a conversation that's been going on for a while now, and there's the whole integrator, technologist kind of conversation. And I just think it's interesting. And our good friends over at Live Install have followed up on on this conversation with a Twitter poll. So we want to give them a plug and encourage people to go cast their vote there. And you can find that at Live Install on Twitter. And they're putting out a week-long poll here for the Live Install community. And they're saying, just call me and the options are HomeTech Pro, Technologist, Integrator, or Custom Installer. And I just want to know, Seth, where do you fall?
Well, I think we all know where you fall.
We do.
Yes,
I may be a little biased.
Yeah.
I'll admit to being a little biased.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to agree with you. I'm not. Don't call me a technologist. I'm in that camp.
Yeah.
Anything, but I like Custom Integrator. I like HomeTech Pro. Yeah. Why not?
Has a good ring to it.
Yeah, it does. I don't know why. But I don't like the technologist. That is too general of a term. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know where that came from. I really don't know how we can rebrand again and confuse people, architects, home builders, and customers. I mean, I don't see how that's going to work out long term.
Right. Yep. And like you alluded to, I agree with you, and put it out there publicly on my latest residential systems column that I put out this week with an article titled "Don't Call Me a Technologist," and shared some of my thoughts there. But generally, I just feel like, this conversation really started in earnest almost a year ago, back at CEDIA 2015, when the organization put out a survey at the show and wanted to know, essentially from the CEDIA members, what if they looked kind of 5 years into the future, what title did they feel like best described what we do? And there were a number of variations on the term integrator, and I believe custom installer was on there. But home technology professional won that survey with 30% of the vote. And I just don't know where like you said, where the phrase technologist comes from. I think that CEDIA spoke in that survey, and CEDIA did decide to standardize on that. So we have seen more of that phrasing become common, where we're being referred to in CEDIA's literature as home technology professionals. Personally, I think for what I do, it's by far the most accurate term, and it's one we've been using for a while. We started HomeTech.fm well before this conversation was even taking place. So clearly, there have been people out there, us included, who have been thinking along these lines for quite a while. I suspect that, Vin Bruno made a recent suggestion. He's the CEO of CEDIA, and kind of urged the industry to move away from the term integrator altogether, and instead suggested the term technologist. And I don't know if that was just an effort to shorten home technology professional, to make it a little more easy to say at a cocktail party or whatever it is. But I just feel like it's an awkward thing. Like, I can't imagine calling myself a home technologist, and it just feels very awkward to say. And I think it's to me, it's every bit as unrelatable as the term integrator. And so I'm just going to stick with home technology professional, or home tech pro for short. And I will say in close, the last kind of thing I want to mention on this is there were a couple comments in my residential systems article that alluded to the fact that, well, what about the folks who out there who are doing, commercial work and light commercial work? But, I'll concede that, yeah, home technology professional, clearly not a catch-all. And for those people, not an accurate title. But when I think of CEDIA, I think of residential. I think of commercial in light of Infocom. And so it's a valid point, but to me, separate conversation.
It's really funny. Last week when week before last, actually, episode 123, when we had this conversation initially, I did some Googling. I was trying to figure out what we could put for an image for the cover art, and I did Google image search, home technologist, and the first thing came up was our logo for HomeTech.fm.
I saw that. That's funny.
What are you going to do? We've already been branded.
So anyways, let's move on. It is an interesting conversation, and I think that it's something worth thinking about as an industry, but don't want to spend a ton of time on it. But if you've got thoughts on it, definitely let us know at Home Tech Podcast on Twitter, or like I said, would encourage you to go check out Live Install. They've got a Twitter poll up. Looks like it's got over 40 votes so far, so a pretty good number. And we'll be curious to see where the results of that end up.
HomeTech Pro.
I cast my vote.
I'm trying to influence. Yeah, I did too. Stack the deck, guys.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of Cedia, and it's a big conversation that we have on the show all the time, and we want to play a little video clip here. There was a conversation that Cedia put up on their website that I thought was great, and it was a conversation between Vin Bruno and Shelley Palmer. And Shelley Palmer is high-level technology advisor, consultant to some big companies, and you can look him up. He's definitely credentialed, and he's going to be giving one of the keynotes at Cedia this year. And I thought this was it was about a 3-minute video clip. You can go watch the whole thing. We're going to play a small portion of it here. It's about a minute or so long, and then we'll give our thoughts on it after that.
Just because you can effectively hang a television or easily hook up Ethernet cable throughout the house and throw together a closet filled with audio and video gear that can be accessed by the client, that's not the job. You actually could hire people for that. Now, it could be you, but that's not the solution that the client's looking for. So if you think of yourself as an integrator or an installer, you're missing the opportunity to think of yourself in a bigger context, which is as a solutions provider. You have to be able to serve that need. You need to serve the need by saying, look, what are you trying to accomplish, client? I am your sole source solutions provider. And by providing a solution to the real problem, which is I live in a connected household or a household that's trying to be more and more connected, and I want to be able to enjoy the new technologies that come out without having to rip my whole house apart. Look, in practice, there's probably a job for a personal IT director. There's probably a job for a CTO of the household that's not the 14-year-old child.
Yeah, well,
I love that last part.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. It makes me think of like every time we do an install or a project, when I see that the homeowners have like a 13 or 14-month-old child. Sorry, I'm a new parent here. A 13 or 14-year-old child. It's always kind of a relief, right? Because you're like, okay, well, there's my tier 1 tech support right
exactly. There. Just hand the iPad over to them. They'll figure it out. Even if you have to train them.
Anyways, yeah.
That's great.
Yep. But I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I came across this clip and thought it was right on point. And like I alluded to, kind of a core theme of our show that we're talking about a lot, particularly for the home technology professionals in our audience. And that's really something that we've got to be thinking about as the industry evolves, and where do we continue to add value as all of these devices proliferate and become less and less expensive and more sophisticated. What is it that we're really doing to provide value? And I love when he talked about, if you consider yourself an installer of TVs, then you're missing a bigger opportunity to be the solutions provider. And I thought that was great. I think it was right on point and definitely food for thought for all the home tech pros in our audience to really, I think about going into Cedia this year in particular. What can you do with that knowledge in mind to really figure out how to position yourselves for the next 5, 10, 15 years in our industry?
Right. And that doesn't involve installing systems and that are so complicated. They require you to be there to keep them running. I think that's been probably the biggest downfall of our industry so far, is that we like the complex nature of the systems that we put in, but our clients sure don't. And I think you've seen the crazy interfaces of AMX and Crestron be replaced over the years by easy on-screen interfaces of Control4 and Savant. The industry has moved that way because our clients demanded we move that way, and here we are. It's 2016. We're looking literally down the barrel of an Apple gun, and it's coming. I mean, by the end of the year, we will have half a billion devices with iOS installed on them, iOS 10 installed on them, that'll have HomeKit built in and a nice little app that appears on the home screen magically. And people are going to be curious about what that can do. It's a game changer. It really is, because listen, if the Apple TV could bring clients into the showroom, think about what having a home app on the home screen of their phone that they look at every day is going to bring into your showroom. And how will you add value to those clients? How will you? I used to work for a guy, and he always said this. This is one of the things with sales. You walk out the door and there's money sitting on the table or sitting on the ground. Do you pick it up? Yeah, you pick it up. You don't let that money go. I mean, that's the way you stay in business. And That's the truth. I mean, this is an opportunity coming up. We're looking at a huge opportunity to expand our market, to expand our client base. And, maybe it's not full blown IP based video distribution with, amazing giant amplifiers driving these, Genelec speakers or something. I mean, we're not going to have very many of those systems out there. I mean, one of the high end projector companies, Christie, just halted their residential business. Crestron's effectively out of the residential business. This industry has and is still continuing to change in big, profound ways. And I don't think if we keep trying to a lot of us, we bury our heads in the sand and we're just trying to plow through and get through with the day to day. But how many days go by before you wake up and look around and say, oh, wow, I'm just hanging TVs for these clients. That's all I'm doing anymore. All the high end AV stuff is gone. I've just been so busy being the installer. I've never really positioned myself as a solutions provider to have my clients long term. I think that the people that go to Cedia, the dealers that do go to Cedia, I think most of them would probably get this, or the dealer side that listens to this show probably understands and gets this. But there's a lot of guys out there who are day to day, everything is in their head. They're just going out doing an install that they got called in the day before, and they go home and go to sleep at night, and that's all they're up to. I know many of those guys here in town, and they're busy bees. But come 10 years from now, I'm not sure where their business is going to be. It's kind of scary to think about. Yeah,
it is, and I think it's everything you said. I agree with completely, and it's been for the last couple of years a key theme that I go into Cedia looking at and thinking about, and it's something I am thinking about every day. Like you said, is a sea change going on right now in the industry, and I see it as an opportunity. I don't see that, don't candy coat it. It's an opportunity, but it's also fraught with a lot of, threats, and it's going to require some change in how we think about our pricing models and how we go about dealing with service after the sale, and, recurring monthly revenue, of course, ties into this whole conversation, and that's a huge, huge deal and a hard thing to adopt. It's not easy to change the way we've been doing business as an industry for decades, but it has to happen. I think it's going to be a gradual change. It's not going to be something that happens overnight, but it is something that we need to be thinking about. And so I thought this video was right on point. There's a little bit more to it. We'll include a link in the show notes at HomeTech.fm/124, and you can watch that, and definitely let us know what you think on Twitter. If you have any additional thoughts to this conversation, again, we're at HomeTech Podcast. I think it's a fascinating conversation in the industry, and it's one that I'm always paying very, very close attention to. So I'll be hopefully able to attend Shelley Palmer's keynote at Cedia. After seeing that video, it's one that I'm more interested to go to and check out. So hopefully we'll be sharing some additional thoughts on that after the show. But let's move on here. We've got, speaking of kind of the higher end of the market and where that's all headed, 4K being a big deal, 4K video distribution, and HDBaseT is a big name in that space and always part of the conversation. And thought this was an interesting story that came out this week over on CE Pro about a listener who had emailed in with some questions about future-proofing the home for 4K 60 444. And so that gets a little bit technical. I think some of our listeners will probably be familiar with that phrase, but in case you're not, 4K is obviously the resolution that most people are going to know about. The 60 part of that is the refresh rate, and then the 444 is really kind of the kicker right now, and that's the color space. So that has to do with the kind of the different number of colors that image is able to reproduce, and 444 is as high as it gets. And right now we really don't have technologies that can do that per se. We can, but it's limited, and HDBaseT is not currently one of those technologies that can do that. So you can get 4K 60 at what's called 420 color space, which, quite frankly, if we're honest, like, you could look at those side by side and very few people are going to be able to see the difference. It's not a dramatic difference per se, unless you've got a very high-end video setup. Still worth thinking about. And this gentleman who wrote in was asking, hey, is HDBaseT going to be able to handle this full spec over Cat 5 or Cat 6? Or if I'm building a home, do I need to actually be thinking about Cat 7? Which, I don't know about you, Seth, but is a question that we get from time to time. And we still are a Cat 6 house. We are pretty set on Cat 6. Feel pretty confident that that's going to be good for as long as the house is. I think that, in this article, Valens, which is the company behind HDBaseT, replied and said, we're working on a spec for this. We don't have it yet, but they did imply that it would be backwards compatible, which I read to mean it will work over Cat 5 or Cat 6. But I think if you're building a home and you're really worried about it, you could pull Cat 7 and give yourself a little extra peace of mind. But to me, Cat 6, Cat 6A still seem pretty adequate.
I'm going to go controversial here and say, don't worry about it. I'm going to say Cat 5 is probably fine. Because I think by the time 444, 60 megahertz, 4K hits the market, video distribution is going to be dead completely. Well, here's the reason. It doesn't make any sense to have a 4K source and a video distributed 4K source. If you're going to have a 4K source, build it into the TV. TVs have are going to have massive computers built inside of them. They're going to be able to natively do 4K through apps, which once you have that written to the silicone, why would you install HDBaseT wiring video distribution system? It doesn't make any sense at all. It absolutely doesn't make any sense to have all this extra equipment when the TV, the panel itself, has the capability to do what you need, 444, right out of the box. Doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to say,
go with Cat 5. Call it a day.
Yeah, go with Cat 5. Make your network as good as possible.
Yep.
Because that's really what's going to matter more than this HDBaseT garbage that I think is just going to be dead. I mean, I say that because I have a love-hate relationship. It's great. It's great that I can run one Cat 5 and it mostly works better than a HDMI balun for HDBaseT, but I really don't see any value in it moving forward. Video distribution within the next 5 to 10 years is dead. You won't be installing it, period.
Yeah.
So you'll be launching your Comcast or Time Warner app right on your TV and tuning in that way.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think that is something worth thinking about is, how long will it be until all of this stuff is just packets on a network and the switching is happening when you're changing apps and it's not happening on a HDMI matrix located down in the basement. It's just your TV has a network cable to it and it's decoding the 4K in real time, pulling those packets off the network, and there's your 4K. And the idea of this kind of hub and spoke distribution HDMI model is, I think its days are numbered. I would agree with you completely. I think that right now it's still got a place in the home for people who want to consolidate their sources and keep things really clean. We're not there yet. And like you said,
we don't even have the 4K sources or material that he's wanting to play.
Right.
I mean, he's trying to future proof, but I'm saying,
no,
you're not even going to see
what you're saying, but yeah. So, and I'm kind of making a separate point just in the sense of don't write off video distribution just yet. I think depending on what you're trying to accomplish with your project, I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. But yeah, back to your point about the cabling.
No, it still has value today.
Yeah,
for sure. Like if you're finishing a house up today and you're not worried about 4K, definitely has value there.
Right. And so like I said, to your point, I think that Cat 7 is overkill. We pull Cat 6. I think you get away with Cat 5. I think that the bigger conversation is what you brought up, which is how much is video distribution worth to you in terms of an infrastructure and equipment investment, when I think it's pretty much all but guaranteed that 5 to 10 years, like you said, the idea of video distribution is going to be antiquated. Things are just going to be up on the network, and you'll have your different apps on your device. And we've talked about that before in just recent weeks about hanging the TV on the wall, plugging it into the network, and that's it. Your content is in the cloud. It's coming across the network, and there's less thought having to be given to, well, what sources am I putting into the home and where are they going to live and that sort of thing. And so I think it's an interesting conversation. It's probably one that we could do, a whole 20, 30-minute deep dive on the whole difference between, video distribution and putting everything on the network. That may be a concept that some people might be listening and not fully grasp the difference there, because it can be confusing. I had a client recently who we were working on an issue with a HDBaseT matrix at their home, and he kept describing the issue, and he was doing some sort of troubleshooting on his own at our direction, and he kept describing the ports on the back of the HDBaseT switch as Ethernet ports. And at one point, he's a sharp guy, he's an engineer, and so I figured he might appreciate the explanation. I wasn't trying to correct him, but I just said, it's a little complicated, but technically these aren't Ethernet ports. It's HDBaseT, and it's different. And, he was interested to learn that. But I think it speaks to the point that this is a very bright guy who's an engineer, and you see an RJ45 jack on the back of an HDBaseT switch, and you think maybe you just assume it's Ethernet, but it's not. It's a totally different technology, and I think it's interesting to think about the differences there and what the implications are for the future of how we handle video in the home.
Yeah. I just think in this case, it's too much thinking going on here.
Well, we know what Seth thinks. Yeah. Pull Cat 5 and move on.
Call it a day. Get a nice network. Save all that money from Cat 7. Run some Cat 6e. I don't care. And save all that money you'd spend on Cat 7 and put it into some nice network switches and, a router. Because that's really what's going to matter more than any of this stuff moving forward.
Makes sense. Great point. Let's move on here. We've got kind of switching gears to more DIY story, and that is that EchoStar, which is a big parent company of Dish Network, huge company if you're not familiar with them. They came out CES 2015, so just about a year and a half ago. They first had publicly unveiled Sage, which was like their smart home as a service, home automation security offering, and had some interesting things we can talk about. But the news here recently, which is kind of surprising, is that they've announced they're going to drop it. They're moving away from it. And so I thought that was a little bit surprising. Not a line we've heard a ton about in the news, but when it did come out, I thought it had a couple interesting features that made it compelling, and it was backed by a huge company. So I expected to see a little bit more out of it.
We're quickly moving into an area of our podcast where I don't have a proper sound effect for it. We've been ringing the bells. I remember ringing the bell for this hub, and now the hubs are dying. we're missing.
No, that's a great point. So, we're going to have to come up with something.
Yeah. I mean, well, and this is expected, right? So this is in the life cycle of things that, get popular, and, hubs was definitely one of them. You're seeing so many of them out there, and you're seeing now the movement away from them and going over to cloud services like Amazon's Alexa Echo thing and Apple HomeKit. But this was a pretty big one from what essentially is a cable or a service provider. My thoughts are, most people I've met that use Dish Network or DirecTV are doing it because they hate the cable provider and they don't want to have all these little transient charges put on their bill.
Right.
So my thought was, of course this is going to fail. The customers that they have hate add-ons. You can't add this kind of stuff on to their bill. So I don't know. That's just my general feeling about the entire situation with this. Not saying it was doomed to fail. It evidently was pretty good, but I think they missed the mark on knowing who their actual customer was for it to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, it looked compelling. Like I said, the hub had Zigbee, Z-Wave, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. Had some interesting ideas we won't spend a ton of time on, but one of the things they were looking at pretty heavily was using the TV as an interface to the smart home to do things like check on maybe who's ringing the doorbell or view cameras. And I know that that's not a completely novel idea. We've seen some of that, but I do think it's still an area where there's a lot of room for improvement. And I do think that eventually the TV will be an integral part of the smart home. I don't know how primary it's going to be in terms of a main control interface, but I think for some of those auxiliary functions, again, like you're watching TV and somebody rings the doorbell and maybe a video pops up or something like that. I think that, having an easy way, there are ways currently to implement that, of course, but having an easy way to do that kind of out of the box for the average consumer, I think is something that has potential to resonate with the market. And so I think that, like I said, I was a little bit surprised. I mean, we hadn't heard a ton about it, but thought it looked compelling. The article that I came across first was from a multichannel.com website, and they quoted Mike Dugan, who is the CEO of EchoStar. And there was one quote in here that I thought was interesting. And he said, although the product had a number of groundbreaking features, a dramatic change in the competitive landscape heavily impacted our chance of this product to achieve a significant positive long-term result for EchoStar. So he's citing a dramatic change in the competitive landscape. And I don't know what has dramatically changed in the last, year and a half, other than maybe they're seeing more writing on the wall from, I don't know, big players like Apple and Google getting some traction in the market, and maybe they don't want to go head to head with them in this space directly. I'm not sure. I thought it was an interesting quote because really the ground, if I was reading this quote maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago, when, like you said, felt like we were ringing the new hub bell every other week, and it was just, Nest was getting acquired for billions of dollars and all of that was going on, then I could very easily see him citing a dramatic change in the competitive landscape. But for him to say that right now, I don't know. I thought it was a little curious. I'm wondering exactly what it is that they were referring to, or if it was just kind of a general mix of what they see going on in the market.
Yeah, the article kind of says that he there was a bunch of competition coming from small startups, and I mean they were competing with I think there was an iControl acquisition not too long ago. I mean they are competing on that level.
Yep,
so
that's true.
They're going to focus on what they do best, which is getting video into your house, and that's probably smart.
Charging you add-ons.
Well, yeah, charging add-ons is not. I mean, I cut the cable cord finally.
Did you?
Now, yeah. Now I'm on antenna. Like I'm not. I'm going to give it some time here before I have a judgment. But really, I'm not missing much from Comcast and the cable service. So, I can understand not wanting to have all those little, hey, you have a doorbell from us. That's an extra $5 a month.
Right.
Hey, you have a motion detector. That's another $5 a month. Eventually you just get tired of seeing those bills come in and start.
Yeah. Starts creeping up every few months. You notice a little increase, and it's like, it's kind of death by 1,000 cuts, right? Because you're just like, well, do I want to spend an hour and a half on a Saturday trying to get answers, or do I just want to, hang out with my kids or whatever it is? And that's I feel like that's how they get you. And I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I just think it's the nature of the beast, and this is how they stay in business. And they've got big operations to feed. And I just think that, like you said, it looks to me like something EchoStar is just saw the writing on the wall, kind of a dog eat dog landscape out there, and just figured, let's cut our losses and get back to focusing on what we do best. But let's move on here. We've got just a couple more stories we're going to touch on this week. And the next one has to do sort of a tie-in here. We're talking about TV and quick conversation here about universal remotes. I thought it was interesting just as we were getting ready to record the show here this week. I came across a piece on The Verge, and I thought was a pretty well put together. The guy did a video, and he's talking about the best universal remote that you can buy. And the part that I thought was interesting about it is I'm paraphrasing here, but basically said, if you're looking for the best universal remote you can buy, basically the only place you can look is Logitech. So it really becomes a conversation about what is the best Logitech remote. And you can read that a number of ways. I think there is some truth to that, in the sense that Logitech has really become the dominant force in kind of that DIY handheld remote space. And we had a listener email that we read on air a few weeks ago where we were having this same conversation. And it's like, what other options are out there? You've got the new Savant remote, which hasn't been out for very long. And I don't think it got a single mention in that video. So I don't know if it was even on the guy's radar. And then beyond that, there's not a whole lot of DIY options out there. We're still waiting for the Neo, waiting patiently for that. But really, I think right now, if you're looking for a DIY remote in that $300 to $400 price range, or under $500, I should say, I don't know where else you can look other than Logitech, and then, take a look at the Savant.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish he had taken a look at the Savant, because I'm curious how that, I don't expect it to stack up nicely next to the Harmony line, but it would be nice to see kind of maybe I'm going to run down to Best Buy and grab one of the Savant remotes and give it a test drive.
Yeah. I think it does. I think it does stack up to the Logitech. It is a newer product, and so I think that.
Well, I don't expect it to have all the bells and whistles, because it's new. Logitech has clearly been out, 10, 15 years. I mean, it's been around for a long time. So I don't expect it to be parity on parity. I mean, if it has most of the features I want, that's great. But I sure don't expect it to be right out of the gate as good as, what Logitech is able to offer because of decades of product testing.
Yeah. Right. And Logitech's been really hard at work for over the last couple of years with integrations with things like If This Then That and Lutron integration and, Philips and Lifix smart lights. And, there's a bunch of stuff that Logitech has currently that's really going to appeal to that DIY power user that the Savant do-it-yourself remote doesn't have yet. I think it's only a matter of time. I think from a form factor perspective, the Savant remote is gorgeous and every bit as nice as any Logitech you could buy. But I just think it is an interesting conversation in the sense that it's a very underserved part of the home, I think, and we're going to continue to see that. I saw an article from Neo this week, and it looks like they're, still busy working away. It's been a long time. We had them on the show, a while back, and really cool product. Love the backstory of Neo. Love that those guys come from the same side of the market that we do in terms of them being, former home tech pros, and they get, the need for a very robust and sophisticated remote that's reliable. And I just think I'm starting to get a little impatient. I think it is such a great looking remote, and I'm just excited to see what they're able to do in the market. So definitely planning to be checking in with those guys at CEDIA.
Yeah, it's March 16, 2015 was when we had Raphael on. About a year ago?
Over a year. Yeah, a little over a year.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's August.
Do you have a new baby at home?
I have no concept of time, which is a problem. So I know that Neo was showing at CES. I reached out to Raphael after reading a couple of these articles and said, "Hey, are you at CEDIA?" He will be at CEDIA. So I'm hoping that it's not too much further off before we'll see this. And then we'll have 3 really nice remotes in the DIY space to kind of pick and choose from. A little quick follow-up on that conversation we had with Kevin, or the conversation I had with Kevin that we read his what the problems that he was having. I said I was going to reach back out to him and find out what was going on. I think he realizes the root of his problem revolves around, and I'm going to say this and you're just going to moan, an Insignia TV. And Q moan. There we go. Yeah, I couldn't have timed that any better. So you get those types of TVs. They don't quite have the best IR capabilities. And when you start trying to control them with a $30,000 Crestron system, they kind of have the same problems. Yeah. So I think he kind of realized that and has done a little bit of troubleshooting, but has still frustrated enough that, he's he's trying to figure out what he can do, but I didn't really have much to tell him after I found that out.
It's kind of like when I was out programming remotes in the field, and I would walk in and I would see the off-brand VHS
Westinghouse
combo VHS DVD player that they wanted me to integrate with
yes
with the Savant remote that they just paid, the Savant control system, I should say, that at the time probably cost them, $8,000 or $9,000. And it's like, that's a very hard conversation to have. Like, no, I cannot make your TV control reliably. So yeah, not really a shortcoming on the control side, or a control system side, I should say. But yeah, there are just certain devices out there that don't play nicely, and that's one of them. I think do want to say in closing on this particular conversation that I referenced a piece I saw on the Neo blog, and I love, if you don't follow their blog, I think you should. I think it's a fascinating insight into product development. They're very transparent with what's going on with the remote, and are constantly sharing updates on their challenges and things that they're doing there. So love that about the company. And, one of their latest was, without going into the details, it was just about the kind of arduous quality control process that they're going through and testing for reliability and making sure that they're getting a really high, test result rate as far as the circuit boards passing and everything. And so I will commend them that it's taking them a long time to ship this remote, but at least I feel a sense of faith in that company, that they're taking their time, they're doing it right, they're going to ship a product that works and is reliable, and they've done their homework to make sure that they've ensured as high a degree of reliability as you possibly can with that particular product. So hats off to them. Want to give them some acknowledgement there, because it is taking them a long time to ship the product, but at least we know that they're doing their due diligence to make sure they ship a product that's ready for prime time.
Yeah, two-year HomeKit rollout. He's got a couple more months ahead of him.
Give him a little slack. Exactly. Right. So anyways, let's move on here. We got one more story to touch on, Seth, and I know that this is one when you saw, you had to know I was going to want to talk about it a little bit, and it's the Logitech Pop, and it's these new physical buttons. I'm a fan of this. They're little different color buttons. They've got like 4 of them. They're about 2 inches by 2 inches big, and you kind of stick them up on the wall or put them on the table and then program them to do different actions. And I think that it's still pretty rudimentary in a sense. There's not, a whole lot of like form factors or different things that you can do with it per se. But I'm just a big fan of this, moving away from this idea that we've had over the last, 5 to 10 years as the iPhone and iPad came out, that, everything has really been focused on the app, and you got to have an app, and how can we give you a custom app with your Crestron or Savant system. But I think moving away from that idea exclusively, obviously the app is always going to have a home in the connected home, but moving to these other ideas of next gen interfaces, I would almost call it, where we're sort of going back a step. What's old is new again, in the sense of just physical tactile control and buttons that we can program to do certain things, so that it's easier for everyone in the house to use the smart home, and you don't have to learn an app or have multiple users set up or anything like that. So I thought it was a cool story, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
It's a cool product. The pricing though is just weird. These switches are $40 each. I think you can get a base station, which is a hub. So maybe I should ring the bell for that. I'm not sure, but
it's a gray area.
Gray area. You get 2 pop switches for $99 and a hub, and then any additional switches that you want run $40 a piece. This seems pricey to me. I mean, even for just seems really pricey.
Yeah, it's certainly not cheap. I think it's a relatively new space. I know there's the flick button that we've talked about presumably a time or two on the show, and that's kind of the same idea, just a programmable little physical button that you can place around the house. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, those are about $30 a piece. So I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but they're in the same 34. So they're in the same ballpark price wise. And I think that, for somebody who's getting into the smart home to this level where they're thinking about putting little physical buttons around and what they can do with them. I think that at least right now, that person is probably, more than willing to spend $100 to get started or $40. It's not a small amount of money, but we're still in that early adopter phase where I think that, the people who are going to be inclined to use this product are probably not going to be completely scared off by the price point. But I do think that for this sort of idea of these little physical buttons that you can put around the house and then program, for that to really take hold and become more prevalent, yeah, I agree. The price needs to come down. But for now, I don't see that as a major sticking point personally.
And it's weird that you would need another hub for this, right? Unless I'm reading something wrong, like this doesn't integrate with the Harmony remotes in any way if you don't have the hub. So you can't just go out and...
Yeah, well, yeah. So I think, if you have the hub,
it's kind of
it will. Like you can use these buttons to trigger, activities from your Logitech remote, of course.
I just wonder why that's not built into their Logitech Harmony hub. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know. That is a good question, but I'm not really sure. I think that these things are interesting. I'm curious to know if there's a company that could come into the Cedia space and do something similar that maybe a little more custom, higher end finishes, something that...
you mean you don't like the little Fitbit looking...
rubber looking plastic?
It's kind of... It looks like a roach trap, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not huge on it. I think it looks a little chintzy, but... I was thinking about this as I was reading the story, and I was like, I think it would be kind of neat to be able to have something like that. You could make the argument, I guess, that we kind of do have that ability through programming to do things with maybe a Lutron lighting keypad, and you could use that to trigger audio scenes or something. So yeah, certainly there are ways to do it, but I think it's kind of a neat concept. And could it be taken to that next level of something a little more custom friendly in a higher end home, that sort of thing? And I'll be curious to see if anybody decides to tackle that.
We'll see that in a couple of weeks.
That's it. Yeah, I was thinking of BaseT, that company, I think Belgian company, but those are like uber high end. They're really designed
$40.
Yeah,
it won't even be
exactly.
$40 dealer cost. It'll probably be $340.
Oh
plus.
Yeah, totally different thing. But just taking that idea and bringing it down somewhere, a middle ground, right? I mean, you've got these very inexpensive Logitech ones, and then you've got BaseT way up there at the high end and primarily focused on doing lighting control, obviously, but certainly through programming, you could get pretty creative with those, I'm sure. But maybe something in the middle, like I think a cool application could be, what about like down in the AV head end, and you could put like some buttons next to the rack that just have little, reset the Apple TV, reset this, reset that. And certainly there are ways to do that now with some of the more sophisticated power conditioners we have, but just like the big red help button, you know what I mean?
Yep. Big easy button.
I think that could be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
An interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, I wonder what a BaseT Roach Motel would look like.
You'll have to ask them.
Yeah, we'll have to see at Cedia this year.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, it looks like we're running up on our time here. I'll put some links to all of this stuff in our show notes, which will be over at HomeTech.fm/124 for episode 124. If you'd like to support the show, we've got a link there as well up at the top, HomeTech.fm/support. There's a couple of different ways, including our Patreon page that you can go in and support the show a little bit. If you have a couple of bucks a month to throw our way, you can do that. We really appreciate all of our patrons who have helped donate to the cause and keep the gears running here, I suppose I should say.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And if you'd like to reach out to us and contact us, you can get a hold of us, as Jason said before, at HomeTech Podcast on Twitter is probably the fastest way. Or you can run over to the website and run to the feedback link at the top, fill out the form, send it in, and that'll email Jason and I both.
Yeah. Definitely. So would encourage people to do that. And I'll echo what you said. Just want to thank everybody who's taken a minute to become a patron of the show. It really means a lot to us. And we definitely would encourage more people to go check that out. So once again, that's at HomeTech.fm/support. You can go learn more about that. And
Want to thank everybody for tuning in this week. Seth, had a great time recording the show, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again next week.
Sounds good, man. I'll see you next week.
All right, take care.